someday the events of my life will become past tense. And it will be told in reference to the things that I do in the present and the impact it will have on the future. You see, someday for my children, I will leave a receipt of the price I had to pay because you see, for them, I will pave a way. And for their children and their children's children, until a legacy is impressed on the hearts of generation yet unborn and it stands, even though it will still be left to them to choose to take a stand. But ultimately, someday I will stand before He who paid the price that I couldn't pay. And because I am a seed, planted and watered by Him, someday I'll have to give Him the yield of how fruitful my life had been. I had tried my best to fit in, believe me. And I was encouraged by living in a society that encourages us to be ordinary. One where you aim for the best, you are unconsciously made to settle for less. A society where we've also unconsciously, yet so skillfully learnt the art of pretense. So I lived, trying my best to blend. Until one day, Purpose called me. And he said, "Hello, extraordinary." And somewhere in between the conversation, he also called me supernatural, which was funny because I hadn't even done anything out of the usual. But you see, initially I didn't pick the call. I pretended to be asleep, so eventually I fell asleep, and in my sleep I dreamed dreams and I saw pictures of my future and they were so inviting. When I eventually woke up, I went back to trying to pretend because I thought maybe this dream wasn't for me. The pictures were too large to fit into my frame of mind. Definitely my mind needed renewal. I kept seeing myself in my own natural abilities and tendencies. And I kept asking, how shall these things be? But Purpose doesn't call those who are seemingly ready and have it all together. Purpose calls those that are willing. And so Purpose kept calling and it was actually getting annoying. And so the willingness inside of me was mixed with a lot of curiosity. I wanted to know what exactly the Purpose want from me. And I also secretly wanted to see those pictures a little bit more clearly because they were so inviting. And so when I eventually picked the call, I was surprised to know that Purpose didn't want anything from me. He simply wanted me. And he already knew all about me. He knew my strength and my flaws. He knew the things that I was well suited for. He knew how far I could go and how that grace would carry me through the road. But Purpose was harsh. Maybe a little bit blunt, but he later explained why. He said, how could you keep sleeping when lives were wasted? Or how could you so desperately want to blend to the dark shades of life when you were called to create the painting? One of the greatest tragedy in life is when he who was born to bring liberation lies in bondage. It's a sad tale of mental slavery. And so how can he become free? Because the standards in life can never give a man his true identity. It was in my conversation with Purpose that I began to see my true identity. And I stayed on the call, and so deep kept calling into deep. But I still had questions. Questions like, why me? Purpose said, because sight is given to many, but vision just a few. I said, so how will I know the things to do? He said, this vision is not your own, it's only given to you to execute. The truth is, I felt like my life was like a newspaper with no front cover, without much stories. It was in my conversation with Purpose that he explained to me that the story of your life might not necessarily make the headlines, but it will definitely bless lives. And because to you has been given the Great Commission, it will bless the lives of many in nations, so you become a blessing to thousands and then to an entire generation. I had to stop him because this was getting overwhelming. Maybe a little bit scary because I still needed to do a lot of learning. I still needed to be equipped with zeal and tenacity. I still needed to build my capacity. And he had to stop me because I was getting myself confused. So he had to remind me that I am a royal priesthood, translated into light all the way from darkness. How could I, who had the very life of light, think that I needed no brightness? So I guess you can guess as to what I decided to do. But in case you can't, let me remind you of what I initially gave as a clue. Someday, the events of my life will become past tense. The events of our lives will become past tense. And it's to be told in reference to the things that we do in the present and the impacts to have on the future. You see, someday for our children, we should leave a receipt of the price we had to pay, because for them, we should pave the way, and for their children and their children's children, until a legacy is impressed on the hearts of generations yet unborn, and it stands. Even though it will still be left to them to choose to take a stand. But ultimately, someday we will all stand before He who paid the price that we couldn't pay, and would have to give Him the report of our lives and the resources He had given us in abundance, because we are all seeds planted and watered by Him. Someday we would have to give Him the yield of how fruitful our lives have been.